I grew up ignored while my brother faked medical crises. He finally told the truth. I was healing until my mom's letter turned it all upside down. You ever find out something so wild, so twisted, that it makes you question your whole childhood, like the very fabric of what you thought was true? That's what happened the week after my wedding, when my younger brother, the golden boy my parents had spent their whole lives orbiting around, confessed that every medical emergency he ever had growing up was a complete and utter lie. And just like that, it all clicked. Every missed birthday, every canceled celebration, every time they left me behind, none of it was fate or bad luck. It was all part of a game I never knew I was playing. Growing up, I used to think we were just your average middle-class family tucked into a quiet suburb an hour outside Chicago, 4 bedrooms, backyard barbecues, a dog that barked too much, the works. From the outside, we looked solid. But if you cracked the surface even just a little, you'd see the truth. I was just a side character in my own home, and my little brother Neil was the star of the show. It started when I was about 10. Neil had just turned 7, and after a soccer game one Saturday morning, he had trouble breathing. Nothing life-threatening, just a mild asthma diagnosis. But from that moment on, everything changed. And when I say everything, I mean my parents rearranged the entire household like their son had been diagnosed with a terminal disease. It didn't matter that the doctor said it was a minor case, manageable with an inhaler. In my parents' minds, Neil became a fragile, precious object that needed to be coddled and protected at all costs. And I became the background noise. My name's Mark, by the way. I'm 30 now, married to a woman named Jess who's got more love in her pinky finger than my parents ever gave me in 20 years. But back then I was just a kid trying to figure out why my science fair project got left in the car while my parents raced Neil to the doctor for what turned out to be a sniffle. Or why my 12th birthday party got postponed indefinitely because Neil said he felt dizzy after gym class. I still remember my piano recital at 13. I practiced for months, pouring myself into a song that most kids my age wouldn't even attempt. My teacher was blown away and said I had a real shot at a music scholarship down the line. The night of the recital, I wore a white button-up shirt that my grandmother ironed for me, and I sat backstage peeking out at the audience, hoping to spot my parents in the front row. They never showed. Later that night, my grandmother quietly told me Neil had another asthma attack. I felt awful, sick with guilt for even being disappointed. But then I found out from a family friend that Neil had been sitting at home playing video games that night. Just chilling. Like nothing was wrong. And the worst part? That became the norm. Every milestone I hit, every event that should have been mine to celebrate, somehow turned into a footnote in Neil's saga of phantom ailments. I was 16 when I had my first part-time job and saved up for months to buy a suit for prom. My dad promised to help me tie the tie. He was supposed to pick me up after my shift and take me home so I could get ready. He never came. Neil had a panic attack because finals were next week, not that day, not even the next week. My mom texted me to take the bus. I took the bus. Missed the pictures. Missed walking in with my friends. Just sat at the corner of the gym, drinking flat punch and wondering why I wasn't worth showing up for. It didn't stop at high school either. College was just more of the same, but with added debt. While Neil got a full college fund just in case he needed medical help, I was pulling double shifts at a diner and taking out loans. They never came to visit me once in 4 years. Not once. Neil got a new car at 18. I got an email with a good luck when I landed my first internship. You know what broke me? Not a missed birthday or graduation. It was the day Jess proposed we leave my parents off the wedding guest list. We sat on the couch, her hand on mine, and she said, "Mark, do you really think they won't find a way to ruin your day?" And I knew she was right. I pictured Neil showing up with a sudden migraine, my mom rushing out mid-ceremony, my dad's face buried in his phone texting updates about Neil's condition. It wasn't even anger that hit me. It was clarity. A realization. Like I'd been holding my breath for 20 years and someone finally let me exhale. So yeah, we got married without them. Without Neil. Without the drama. Jess's dad gave me a toast that had half the room crying. Her mom danced with me like I was her own. And for once, the day was about me. Us. No crises. No interruptions. Just joy. But if you think that's where it ends, you don't know my family. Because 1 week later, my cousin Kay called me with a voice so shaky, I thought something awful had happened. And in a way, it had. "Mark," she said. "Neil told me everything. He made it all up. The asthma, the panic attacks, the hospital trips. He did it to get attention." I didn't speak. Couldn't. My mouth was open, but nothing came out. "He said he was jealous of you," Kay continued. And it became a game. He said your parents were so easy to manipulate, he just kept doing it. You know that moment when your entire past replays itself like a slideshow from hell? That's what happened in that instant. And I knew. This was only the beginning. I must have sat in silence for a solid minute after Kay told me Neil confessed to faking everything. Not just once or twice, not even just the big stuff. Everything. It wasn't like some teenage prank or one-time cry for attention. No, this was a pattern, a strategy, a damn performance that ran for nearly 2 decades, and my parents bought front-row tickets every time. Mark, Kay asked, soft but hesitant. You still there? Yeah, I finally said, my voice hoarse like I'd swallowed sand. Did he really say that? Like, actually admit it? He was drunk, she said. But it wasn't just rambling. He went into detail. Said it started out as a way to get out of stuff. Chores, school, piano lessons. But then he noticed how Mom and Dad treated him when he said something was wrong. It was like they turned into different people, more affectionate, more present. So he kept doing it. I remember gripping the edge of the kitchen counter so tight my knuckles turned white. Jess was sitting on the couch across from me, watching with concern but letting me process it in my own time. I repeated Kay's words in my head like a broken record. He kept doing it. I wasn't angry, not yet. At that point, I was something worse. I was empty. You ever feel like you just got robbed of your entire childhood? I asked Jess when I hung up the call. She nodded, then crossed the room and wrapped her arms around me. I didn't cry. Not then. I just stood there, feeling the weight of 2 decades pressed down like a 1,000-pound anchor had been tied to my back since I was 10 years old and I had never even noticed. The next morning, I woke up with a different energy. Cold, surgical focus. I needed answers, not from Kay, not from Jess, not even from Neil. I needed to hear it from the ones who let it all happen. My parents. I called my mom first. She answered after one ring, her voice already laced with tension. Mark? She said, like she wasn't sure if she was happy to hear from me or bracing for impact. I know, I said straight to the point. I know Neil admitted everything. The fake asthma, the hospital trips, the panic attacks, all of it. Silence. Not the kind of silence where someone's caught off guard and scrambling for a response. No, this was a different kind of silence. Heavy, defensive, calculating. Where did you hear that? She asked, her voice tight. Kay, I said. He told her, while he was drunk. But honestly, I'm not surprised anymore. Not after all those years. I just want to hear it from you. Did you ever suspect? Even once. Her breathing changed. Shallow, clipped. We were doing our best, she said finally. It's not that simple. You don't understand, he was sensitive. He needed us. And I didn't? I asked, my voice starting to rise. I didn't need you when you left me homecoming night in a tux waiting by the window? Or when you missed my graduation because he had a panic attack about finals that weren't even that week? Or when I walked across that college stage alone after busting my back working 2 jobs, and you texted me saying Neil had a migraine, only to find out he was partying that night? I was pacing now, my pulse racing. Jess stood nearby, silent, ready to step in if I needed grounding. You made everything about him, I said. And now you're telling me you just did your best? Her voice cracked. We didn't know. You didn't want to know, I snapped. Because it was easier to believe he needed saving than to admit you were neglecting your other son. I hung up before she could say another word. I wasn't ready to hear the excuses. Not yet. An hour later, my phone buzzed with a message from Neil. I'm sorry. I don't expect forgiveness. Just wanted you to know that none of it was about you. I was just broken. I stared at that text for a long time. My thumb hovered over the keyboard, then backed away. What could I even say to that? Thanks for the confession? Too little, too late? There weren't words big enough to patch up the crater he'd left in my life. But that was only the beginning. A week later, Jamie's mom, God bless that woman, called me. She's a pediatric nurse with 30 years of experience and had seen enough medical drama to last a lifetime. She offered to talk to my mom, try to build a bridge, maybe even help them see reason. I was hesitant, but I said sure, knowing she was coming from a place of kindness. The call lasted less than 10 minutes. She hung up on me, Jamie's mom told me afterward, shaking her head. I gently pointed out how Neil's symptoms never aligned with anything severe, how someone with that many supposed breathing issues wouldn't be running marathons, hiking every weekend, and drinking like a fish at parties. Your mom didn't want to hear it. She accused me of meddling and told me to stay out of family matters. At that point, something inside me cracked open. Not anger. Not sadness. Something deeper. Resolve. Because this wasn't about asthma anymore. Or missed birthdays. Or a ruined prom. This was about a system of favoritism and denial that had robbed me of every ounce of recognition I had ever earned. And I wasn't about to let that go unanswered. I don't think people really grasp how betrayal doesn't always show up in the form of screaming fights or knives in the back. Sometimes it's quiet. Subtle. It builds slowly over time, like rot beneath a floorboard. You don't realize how far gone things are until you step down one day and the whole thing caves in. That's how it felt when the memory of the dress hit me. It came out of nowhere. Jess and I were cleaning out old boxes before our move to Boston, and I opened one labeled High School. Inside was my old debate team blazer, a cracked football from my freshman year, and then, at the bottom, wrapped in thin plastic, was the dress. Her dress, technically a homecoming dress I bought with my own money for a girl named Rachel who was my date that year. But the point was, it was supposed to be a night I'd never forget. And instead, I did forget it because it never happened. I was 17. I'd been saving up for months working at a gas station on weekends, mowing lawns after school. I picked out a slim-cut navy suit, got my hair trimmed, even washed Dad's car without him asking just so I could borrow it that night. Mom helped me choose a boutonniere, first time she'd shown any interest in something I was doing in years. I thought maybe, just maybe, they'd come around. Then, an hour before I was supposed to pick up Rachel, Neil claimed he had severe abdominal pain. Mom and Dad rushed him to the ER like it was a life-or-death emergency, leaving me behind with a note that said, "Stay ready in case we get back in time." I waited. And waited. Tied my tie 3 times. Checked my phone every 5 minutes. They never came back. Rachel went to the dance with a friend. I missed the entire thing. Later that night, I heard the diagnosis: gas. Not appendicitis. Not a blockage. Just gas. A couple Tums and he was back to playing Xbox in his room before midnight. I shoved the dress back in the box and slammed the lid shut. It hit me in that moment just how deep the damage ran, not just the missed events, but the things I'd never even tried for because I knew, deep down, they wouldn't show up. Jess caught me sitting on the floor, staring at the box like it had punched me in the chest. She didn't say anything at first. Just sat down next to me and rested her head on my shoulder. "You need to talk to someone," she said gently. "I'm talking to you," I replied. She shook her head. "Someone who can help you unpack all this. You've been carrying it so long, you don't even realize how heavy it is." I didn't argue. She was right. The next day, Kay called again. "I think you should know something," she said. "This isn't just about Neil's lies anymore." I braced myself. "She showed me the messages, Mark. Your mom. She planned to sabotage your wedding. Before she even knew she wasn't invited." My stomach dropped. "What do you mean?" I asked, voice low, steady. She texted another aunt saying she was concerned about Neil needing extra support during the ceremony. She actually wrote, "We may have to create a moment just to shift focus. I'll bring his inhaler just in case he needs to step outside dramatically." Like she was planning a stage cue. I felt like the room tilted sideways. "She was going to steal your moment, Mark," Kay continued, voice trembling now. "She wasn't just enabling Neil, she was trying to ruin your day on purpose." I leaned back against the wall, my heart hammering. All those years I'd wondered if I was just imagining it, if I was being too sensitive. Turns out I wasn't sensitive enough. Kay said she showed the texts to a few other family members, ones who had been skeptical about me leaving our parents off the guest list. Several of them called to apologize. Some even admitted they'd seen signs for years but were too afraid to speak up. That same week, I got a voicemail from Dad. I hadn't heard his voice in months. "You tore this family apart," he said. "Neil's been sick ever since the wedding. He's stressed. He's not eating. You think you've got all the answers, but you've just proven how selfish you are. A real son would make this right." I deleted the voicemail and sat down at the kitchen table, staring at the walls. Every inch of that house was filled with reminders of who I had to become just to survive the family I was born into. I didn't respond to my father. Instead, I opened my laptop and emailed a therapist that Jess's mom had recommended. I told them I wanted to talk about childhood, family, lies, boundaries. The whole mess. Because I finally understood something crucial. The damage wasn't just in the past. It was still happening. And if I didn't do something now, it was going to bleed into every part of the future Jess and I were trying to build. But I also knew the story wasn't over yet. Not by a long shot. When I walked into that therapist's office the next week, I didn't really know what I was expecting, maybe some generic lines about boundaries and self-care, or polite nods while I unloaded 2 decades worth of family dysfunction. But what I got was something far more jarring than I ever imagined. I sat down on that gray couch, folded my hands, and opened my mouth. And for the first time in years, I couldn't speak. I wasn't choking on emotion, I wasn't scared, I just didn't know where to start. How do you explain to a stranger that every time you hit a milestone, your parents found a way to make it about someone else? That your younger brother faked medical conditions to stay in the spotlight and your parents cheered him on without ever looking at the damage he left behind? So I started small. I didn't invite my parents or my brother to my wedding, I said finally. And now that I know the truth, I feel more messed up than I did before. The therapist nodded gently. And what truth is that? That my brother admitted to making it all up. The asthma, the anxiety, the ER visits. He confessed it to my cousin. And my parents, they weren't just fooled. They were complicit. They still won't acknowledge it. She let the silence hang for a moment. Mark, she said carefully, what you experienced isn't just neglect. It sounds like you were part of a family system where your needs were systematically overlooked. That has a name. It's called emotional enmeshment, where one child becomes the emotional focus of the family and the others are conditioned to suppress themselves to maintain the balance. I sat there blinking at her like she just handed me the translation to a language I'd been hearing my whole life but never understood. Why didn't I see it? I asked quietly. Why didn't I push back sooner? Because as a child, she said, you assumed it was your job to adjust. That's what kids do when they're raised in imbalance. They don't rebel. They accommodate. You weren't weak, you were surviving. That line hit me like a freight train. I wasn't weak. I was surviving. All those moments when I sat alone in a room filled with decorations waiting for people who never came, all the times I smiled through my teeth while others got celebrated, those weren't failures. They were adaptations. Armor. Later that week, I met Kay for coffee. We hadn't talked in person since the wedding and I could tell she was carrying the weight of everything she'd learned, just like I was. There's more, she said, eyes flickering with hesitation. Neil told me he used to plan his fake illnesses around your events. Not just random timing, he would actually keep track of your school calendar, your competitions, your birthdays. Said he didn't even know why he did it anymore, just that he had to. Like he couldn't stand the idea of not being the center of attention. I leaned back in my chair, letting that settle in my bones. So it was intentional, I said flatly. Not just a messed up cry for help. She nodded. He even admitted he felt powerful. Like he could control the entire family with one cough or one panic attack. There was something chilling about that. About knowing your brother spent years sabotaging your life not because he was struggling, but because it made him feel important. And it gets worse, she continued. He said Mom knew. Not all the time, but sometimes she knew he was exaggerating. She just didn't care. She said things like, at least it keeps the family together, or *, Mark can handle disappointment better than Neil can handle pressure. I laughed. Not a joyful laugh. One of those hollow, bitter ones that escape when the truth is so dark it becomes absurd. They chose him, I said. Over and over. And now I'm the villain for not inviting them to the wedding. Kay reached across the table and touched my hand. You're not the villain, Mark. You're just the first one to stop pretending it didn't happen. That night, I sat down with Jess and told her everything, every detail Kay had shared, every word from the therapist, even the confession that Neil used to track my life just so he could disrupt it. And Jess, ever steady, ever strong, just took my hand and said, then it's time to decide what kind of life we want to build. One that keeps dragging this weight behind it, or one that finally lets go. She was right. And for the first time, I could actually see the road ahead. I wasn't just the boy who got left behind anymore. I was the man walking away from the wreckage and towards something real. But just as I was starting to find peace, I got an email. Subject line, from Neil. And inside it was a message that would flip this whole story upside down one more time. I must have stared at that subject line for a full 5 minutes, hand hovering over my mouse, before I finally clicked it open. Jess was beside me, curled up with a book, and I think she could feel the tension rise off me like steam. When I finally said, it's from Neil, she didn't even need to ask, she just closed her book and waited. The email started out simple enough. Mark, I know I'm the last person you want to hear from. I don't blame you for that. But I need to tell you something I should have said years ago, before everything fell apart, before the wedding, before Kay told you the truth, before all of it. I kept reading, heart pounding louder with each line. I've started therapy. At first, it was just to deal with anxiety and depression, but it's turned into something bigger, something deeper. I've been unpacking everything that happened between us and between me and our parents. And I realize now how much I hurt you. There were no excuses in that paragraph. No spin. No half apology pretending to be noble. It was raw. Ugly. Honest. I won't pretend I didn't know what I was doing. I did. Not at first, but once I realized how easy it was to get their attention, it became a game. A sick one. It started with me faking a cough to get out of school, but when I saw how Mom panicked and Dad dropped everything to bring me orange juice and fluff pillows, I liked it. It made me feel important. Seen. I swallowed hard. Jess placed her hand on mine, grounding me. It got worse when I saw how it affected you. I remember one time, I was maybe 10, you were rehearsing for a talent show and I pretended I couldn't breathe just to see if they'd choose me over you. They did. That moment stuck with me. Not because I was proud of it, but because something in me cracked. I realized that love in our house was earned through crisis. And you didn't stand a chance. Reading that felt like taking a punch to the chest. There it was proof. Cold, unfiltered truth about the lengths he'd gone to keep me in the shadows. By the time we were teenagers, it was just second nature. I didn't even have to try hard anymore. They assumed I was fragile, so I became the role they wanted. And you became invisible. I didn't mean to steal your moments, Mark. I just couldn't stop once I started. The next part caught me completely off guard. I read the wedding post. I know you didn't want us there. And I don't blame you. But when Kay showed me Mom's texts about planning to sabotage your wedding, I almost threw up. It's one thing for me to be a messed up teenager desperate for attention. It's another for our parents, adults, to enable that behavior and even weaponize it. I didn't know she'd stoop that low. I scrolled further. My hands were shaking. I'm sorry, Mark. Not because it's convenient. Not because I want you to forgive me and everything magically goes back to normal. I'm sorry because I see it now. I see you now. And I hope one day, when the dust settles, we can rebuild something. Not as brothers stuck in a broken past, but as men trying to start again. The final paragraph was short. Simple. I'm looking for full-time work. I've stopped relying on them. I'm moving out in a month. I just wanted you to know that the cycle ends with me. I stared at the screen long after I finished reading. Jess didn't say anything, she just waited, her hands still resting in mine. Do you believe him? She asked finally. I took a deep breath. I think, for the first time in his life, yeah. I do. But belief wasn't the same as trust. Trust takes time. And while that email cracked open the door, it didn't erase the years of silence I'd been forced to live in. I forwarded the message to Kay. She called 20 minutes later. So, she said cautiously, are you going to respond? I hesitated. I don't know. Part of me wants to. Part of me wants to leave it alone and just move on. Kay sighed. Look, I'm not going to tell you what to do. But I will say this, Neil admitting all that. That's not nothing. He's the first person in this family to tell the truth. She was right. But the truth, as powerful as it is, doesn't clean up the mess it exposes. It just throws a spotlight on it. And now that the mess was out in the open, I had a choice to make. Do I reach back for a brother who destroyed me one fake illness at a time? Or do I walk forward, leaving behind every piece of the life they tried to make me forget? But before I could decide anything, my father called again. And this time, he didn't just want to talk. He wanted to confront me. The call came on a Thursday evening while Jess was out running errands. I just finished dinner and was cleaning up when my phone buzzed with a number I hadn't seen in a while, Dad's. For a moment, I considered letting it ring. I'd ignored his last dozen messages, most of them angry, some borderline desperate. But something about this one felt different. Maybe it was the silence I'd kept since Neil's email. Maybe it was that I needed to finally say things I'd been holding in for years. Whatever it was, I answered. Mark, he said, his voice immediately rigid, like he was reading off a script he'd memorized from days of rehearsing. I didn't respond. I know you talked to your cousin. And I know about Neil's little confession, he continued. And I just want to say you're making a mistake. There it was. No apology. No accountability. Just an accusation. I kept my voice calm. What mistake is that? Cutting us out. Rewriting history. Acting like we were bad parents because your brother had medical issues and we tried to support him. You didn't try to support him, I said. You made him the center of your universe. You made everything about him, even things that weren't. I became a ghost in my own life. That's not true, he snapped. You always had what you needed. You were independent. Smart. You didn't need the kind of attention Neil did. We were just adjusting to his situation. I clenched my jaw. His situation? You mean the asthma that never flared up unless I had a recital? Or the panic attacks that vanished the second the spotlight passed. Or the migraines that miraculously healed themselves the minute the party was over. Silence. Neil admitted it, I said, quieter now. He faked it. All of it. And you believed him. Worse, you ignored everything else to keep the illusion going. I don't want to talk about Neil, he said suddenly, his voice tightening. This is about you disrespecting your family. About you choosing to shame us. That made me laugh, bitter and hollow. Disrespect? Dad, you and Mom planned to sabotage my wedding. I've seen the messages. Neil didn't even know. That was all her. He didn't deny it. Just exhaled sharply. We thought if you saw how much he needed us, maybe you'd reconsider shutting us out. I stared at the wall, my hand gripping the countertop. You really don't get it, I said. You never saw me. Not once. Not when I made valedictorian. Not when I walked across the stage alone because you stayed home for Neil's fake meltdown. Not when I put myself through school on no sleep and 2 jobs while you funded his education in case of possible medical needs. And now, even with everything exposed, you still see me as the problem. You think you're the only one who suffered? He fired back. Do you have any idea what it's like watching your son fall apart, thinking every day might be the day something happens to him? Yeah, I said. But it wasn't real. He didn't speak. And I'm done pretending any of it was, I said. I'm done playing the dutiful son while you rewrite every memory into a noble sacrifice for a sick kid who wasn't even sick. I'm not doing it anymore. Then maybe we're done, he said. Cold. Final. Maybe we are. And I hung up. I stood there afterward, heart pounding, staring at nothing. Jess came home minutes later and found me still gripping the edge of the counter. What happened? She asked softly. I think, I said, still staring ahead, I just ended it. She wrapped her arms around me, no questions, no analysis. Just her presence. Her quiet, steady love. And I realized right then I hadn't lost anything worth keeping. I hadn't ended a family. I'd escaped one. The next day I got a call from Neil. I didn't answer. But he left a message, and this time he wasn't asking for forgiveness. He was asking for permission. I waited a full day before I listened to Neil's voicemail. I'd seen his name pop up on my screen and felt something shift in my gut, something I couldn't name yet, somewhere between anxiety and reluctant curiosity. After everything, after the email, the confessions, the weight of what he'd done, I wasn't ready to open that door. Not until I knew I could hear it without getting pulled back under. But eventually, I pressed play. His voice was quiet. Softer than I remembered. Like someone who wasn't just apologizing, he was dismantling whatever pride he used to hide behind. Hey, Mark. It's me. Again. I know you probably don't want to hear this, and I get it. I've got no right to expect a response. But I wanted to ask you something. Not for Mom or Dad. Not for the family. For me. I want to make things right. Not by talking it to death, not by dumping more guilt on you. I just want to meet. Just you and me. A real conversation. No parents. No drama. No expectations. Just the truth. I know I messed up. I know I ruined a lot of things. But I'm trying to figure out who I am without all that noise. And you're part of that. You've always been part of that. I'll be at that diner near the old library on Sunday at 11. I'll wait for an hour. If you don't show, I'll understand. If you do, maybe we can finally talk about what really happened to us. I sat there for a while after it ended. Jess didn't press. She just gave me space. When Sunday came, I woke up early, dressed simple, no expectations. Just a man heading into a conversation that had been 2 decades in the making. I drove to the diner slowly, the streets still quiet, everything wrapped in that early morning hush where even the traffic lights seem half asleep. He was already there. He looked different, lighter maybe. His shoulders weren't hunched the way they used to be when he was putting on an act. His hands weren't fidgeting. He wasn't staring at his phone, pretending not to be anxious. He was just sitting there, eyes on the door, waiting for me like a man who knew he couldn't rush forgiveness. When he saw me, he stood, but didn't smile, just nodded. I sat across from him. No words at first, just silence and the hum of a coffee machine in the background. I wasn't sure you'd come, he said finally. Neither was I replied. He let out a breath. Thanks for giving me the chance. I sipped the water the waitress brought, still watching him, unsure what to say. I don't want to rehash everything, Neil said. You already know most of it. What I wanted to tell you in person was, I'm not looking for you to fix anything, or forget it. I'm just hoping to stop being that version of myself. And I can't do that unless I own what I did to you, face to face. He paused like he expected me to jump in. I didn't. I needed to hear all of it. I hated how easy it was, he continued, getting their attention, turning the house upside down with one word. At first, I felt powerful, but after a while, I felt pathetic. I knew what I was doing, Mark, and the more they praised me for being brave or resilient, the more I started to believe I was only worth anything if something was wrong with me. That part caught me off guard. I became addicted to being fragile, he said, because it was the only time I felt seen. I leaned back, letting that sink in. And you didn't think, maybe once, to just stop? He nodded. I did. Every time I saw your face after they blew off another milestone. After they skipped your graduation or missed your speech or ignored your acceptance letter. I saw it. I knew I was taking something from you, but I didn't know how to stop. And the worst part, he looked up, eyes red but steady. I don't think they ever wanted me to stop, because if I wasn't the one falling apart, they'd have to face everything they'd done to you. That landed like a brick in my chest, because I'd thought it, I'd suspected it, but hearing him say it out loud made it feel real. They chose you, I said. He nodded. Yeah, but not in a way that ever really helped me. They made me dependent on their worry. They never taught me how to stand on my own. I'm 25, and I've never had to be a real adult until now. Silence settled between us again. I'm not asking you to forgive me, Neil said. I'm asking if we can stop being enemies. Not brothers, not yet. Just two people trying to heal in the same direction. I didn't answer right away. I looked at him, really looked at him, for the first time in years. Not the performer, not the manipulator. Just a broken man, finally admitting he broke something. Okay, I said finally. We'll see where it goes. And for the first time, Neil smiled. But back home, just as I was starting to feel like maybe some things could change, Jess handed me a letter. It had come while I was out. No return address. Inside was a handwritten note from my mother. And what it said was something I never saw coming.